and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your NASCAR betting and DFS home. That is Brian Twining. I am Kyle Robert. We are back from Las Vegas. Brian Twining, we had a nice little week out in Vegas, didn't we?
Oh, it's always great when you go to Vegas, Kyle. But especially when one of us hits a 17-1 outright, sir. And then obviously we killed it. We were heavy on Alex Bowman early in the week. His top 10 numbers being over plus money at a track that he had performed well at last season were ridiculous. And we went heavy there. Our matchups hit. I mean, fading Joey Logano finally worked out for your boy.
You were able to be on the right side. Yeah. We had a nice week. You had the Bubba top 10. We'll review the whole betting card and do our normal thing, but we wanted to jump on and talk with Chris Werme. You've seen him on this podcast before. You should be checking out Stay Green each and every week. I will link that down in the description. He is a professional NASCAR bettor. This is what he does for a living. So we wanted to pick his brain, get some thoughts on kind of what we've seen so far, what the Chase Elliott news means for futures market, what it means for week-to-week betting, all of that good stuff. But before we dive in, Chris, how the hell are you?
Oh, man, I'm great. Off to a good start on the season. It's kind of crazy. I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but the last few seasons with as many changes as there's been to the car, I feel like I've done better early in the season than later in the season. Yeah. Like, I feel like we're kind of around the corner more than the odds makers at this point. And so I feel like, I mean, the NASCAR gambling Twitter community, I feel like, has done very well for itself these first few races. And you need that, right? You're going to need these runs of the season because there's going to be a point where maybe we don't have these runs. So it's nice to see everybody cashing early. And hopefully listen, I'm not opposed to continue or to stop. Let's just keep going.
Let's crush all season long.
But you do need these runs early in the season, or at least at some point, to really make the hay. And I think everyone's done a good job, and both of you guys have, I know, early on in the season so far.
Yeah, and Brian, I feel like last year, especially for me, it was high highs in the beginning and then kind of faltered in the middle of the year, learned some stuff with the new car, and then we had a strong close. We had some options. We had Ross Chastain outrights in our pocket at 55 and 60. We had Chase Briscoe at 150. That was this close from getting in the final four.
For him to get
so we had some highs, we had some lows, but yeah, it's been a strong start to the season. Obviously, being there in person for a winner just was a whole new high. But Chris, let's jump into the Chase Elliott stuff. Obviously, kind of a bomb getting dropped into the beginning of the week. Chase was snowboarding, broke his leg. We'll see kind of when his possible return is. I know they applied for the waiver. It sounds like it's probably going to come for him just because I think it's based on kind of a safety concern and not rushing the driver back into the car. But I guess from a gambling perspective, we'll start with the kind of the long-term view, the futures market. Obviously, this is a guy who can get back in the car, who can have a strong second half, who could win races and be a lock. But do you think in terms of the odds and what we may see in the futures market, we're going to get a shift, or are the bookmakers just comfortable with where they're at and kind of going to ride it out?
Yeah, I think we'll know more when we know exactly how long he's out. They've been talking about 6 weeks. But here's the deal. He's going to get his waiver. I think NASCAR would be silly to make Chase an example. Like, if you're going to make someone an example of like what you should be doing on or it, by the way, like, markets work. So
yeah,
Napa is paying the biggest price here of everybody, Chase fans and Napa. I mean, if you're Napa, you got to be like, well, man, this is a problem.
Yeah.
But from a betting perspective, I mean, he's going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I do think he's going to be required to win races late, when it comes to that final 8. Just, you're not having playoff points and you're learning less about the car. And, we also remember this is a new car, 30% reduction in downforce, where he's not going to have access to that for, he's not going to be back for Richmond and, Bristol and some of these other places where short tracks that are going to be important to getting points in the playoffs. So, but I mean, he had to win when he won the championship too. He needed to win at Martinsville. So I think that odds makers are actually right by leaving him, as maybe not the favorite, but like not increasing his odds too much. I mean, that would be ridiculous. If you got him up to 10 or 12 to 1, that would be dumb because he's going to be there. The one advantage, it's sad, but as soon as it happened, you have to think, how can I make money off of this?
Mhm.
And so then it's like, as sad as like, that's the truth. If someone's asleep at the wheel and I was able to get down on his under 3.5 wins, that we're still up on some locals. And so I'm not going to I didn't get that much down on it, but I feel like it's a decent, I mean, I like his under 3.5 wins. I mean, he's going to be out for at least 6 weeks.
It's a good position to be at. And then obviously you can come back if things start looking better and he looks like he may be back sooner, get down on his futures and kind of build, have a little balance there. But it is interesting. And I think I guess my hope is that, just continue to monitor the market. The longer he's out, kind of maybe 4 weeks, then maybe we'll see that best price available. But as you mentioned, he's a guy who can easily do what Chris Bell did last year, get in the Final Four and be in the conversation for the championship when it matters most.
Well, one other thing too, I think it also depends on kind of how Josh Berry runs. If Josh Berry starts, listen, I give him a pass this last week. I mean, no sim time. He's just jumping in a car. He'd never been in a cup car. Like, okay, let's give Josh Berry a pass. I think he's a great driver. I'm a big Josh Berry fan. I think he does a lot of things, I guess, kind of similar to Chris Bell. He gets much better throughout the race, and as he learns. But he was behind the 8 ball. He qualified terrible. You're back there in dirty air, getting put a lap down early on. Yeah. That's a tough one. Yeah. But if he starts kind of figuring it out and start getting like these, let's just say an 8th to 12th place run where he's kind of mixing it up in that top 10. I mean, you got to figure when Chase Elliott gets in that car that he's going to be contending for wins, not after a couple of weeks, but right away. So I think also seeing how that kind of car does without him in it, because Josh Berry's super talented. So I'll be interested to see what happens there as well.
And Brian, we'll have to keep an eye on his prices too, because obviously when they re-released odds, he was way higher than I think most people expected.
Oh yeah.
It'll be curious to see if he struggles a little bit early. Maybe we end up getting a better price once he starts to get comfortable, and maybe we can find a spot to get in on him and find ourselves a nice payday.
Yeah, and that was kind of something I like. So to Chris's point, like you go to the market to try to make money. Like my first initial reaction was seeing the Chris Elliott news was
Chase Elliott.
Sorry,
I'm Chris.
Thinking about Chris Werme. Was how can I take advantage of this from a Hendrick perspective? And my first thought was that knowing that he's going to be out, I would feel like they would punt, kind of trying to put forth the best effort possible to try to get that 9 into victory lane and allocate a little more resources from the team and research towards the 48 and 24. And I mean, I don't know how much of that actually happened, but we saw it on track this last weekend in Vegas. Hendrick was running 1-2-3 or 1-2-4 for a lot of the day. William Byron took home the win. Alex Bowman looked great. And I just think that the longer Elliott is out, I think they stay more focused in trying to get Bowman a victory and pushing to try to get as many Hendrick cars into the playoff race. Yeah. Just kind of knowing, to Chris's point, like when Elliott comes back, he's fully capable of winning a race to just get into the playoffs and then win any of those races in each round of the playoffs to advance.
Yeah, no, totally. Just pulling up the futures odds to look at somewhere the prices.
I think I saw Elliott at like 9-1.
Yeah, it looks like the best you can get. Actually, Rivers has him at 10. He's 9.5 in a couple spots, and then 9-1 at BetMGM. So, if we keep staying, I feel like it would be hard for him to crash much below that until he comes back. So you might be able to even get a little bit better of a number.
Well, what happens also, it also depends on who wins. Like if Kyle wins 2 more races between now and when Kyle Busch comes back and wins 2 more races, his price is gonna plummet. True. And you might get a better price on Chase. Same thing if it happens to Larson. It all depends on who wins these next few races. Depends to see where odds will go, because if Larson or Kyle Busch win a couple races between now and then, they will be the heavy favorites. The same could go for someone else that comes out of nowhere and just wins a couple quick races.
Yeah.
So I would wait to fire on him because they're not going to go down. Like if they're already sitting at 10, like, I mean, you might as well wait it out. He might be 14. If Kyle Busch wins 2 races between now and then, which could easily happen, or Kyle Larson, they're going to be the heavy favorites, and Chase is going to be kind of an afterthought. You might be able to sneak a 14 or 15 to 1. I don't know if that's possible. Whenever I say crazy things like, we'll never see 15 to 1. Someone opens at 17 to 1. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how did this happen? So you never know.
Yeah.
And also too, I think you also have to slightly worry about whether or not that Hendrick tries to push him out a little bit longer. Like I know they're prognosticating possibly 6 weeks, but what if we get a couple weeks from now and they're saying he's not healing as fast as what they thought, or Josh Berry is performing a lot better than what we thought, and they're like, oh, we're gonna wait a couple more races, and that number is only going to get longer.
Yeah.
Speaking of kind of expectations for the long term, obviously last year we saw multitude of winners. It seemed like every week we saw somebody new in victory lane. Another year with the car, the best teams in theory are going to put the most money into it to have the best. Having multiple cars like Hendrick does really helps. But in terms of like season long expectations, Chris, do you think we get a year like last year where every week we have somebody who can win, or is it going to be a lot more like condensed, like kind of what we're expected?
I think what we saw last year is not going to happen again.
Yeah.
You've already seen the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. You could just look at a team like SHR. I mean, Harvick racking up almost as many points as the other 3 drivers combined. And I know that, yeah, we did get a Briscoe win at Phoenix. We'll see what he has this week. But Briscoe also did run well the first race at Fontana last year. He was up there until they stayed out on tires. Who stays out on tires at Fontana? You're going to go to the back. Like, nobody was shocked there. So that ruined their finish. He was competitive in Vegas, and he was competitive, obviously, at Phoenix. So this year, I mean, he's not even a lead lap car.
No.
So, and I think that now that we've classified Trackhouse as they're a top tier team, I don't think we're going to have surprises like we did last year. Eric Jones and Gregson, they've struggled more than I thought that they were gonna. I kind of fully expected Jones to be at least competitive in these first couple races. He's just kind of been a little bit of an afterthought. Yeah. So I think we're going to see as they learn more about these cars, the teams that spend more money, the margin of like increased like speed is just getting smaller and smaller and smarter. You're smaller. So you're like every dollar you're getting that diminished marginal return, but those teams that have a ton of money, they can spend it because they need that half a tenth or a tenth a second. So I don't think we'll quite see what we saw last year. But who knows? We got a 30% reduction in downforce. Maybe someone catches something. I know that Denny in his podcast said, take whatever you think about this race coming up and throw it out the window because it's going to be completely different. Perfect.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. I think the first like month of the season has kind of given us some good thoughts, Brian. I think going forward, we'll want to consider that as we're looking at outrights, like who can legitimately win. Like I know last year there was a million people that had potential to win. But I think we need to narrow our vision on legitimate outrights, guys that can win, on a week-to-week basis. Maybe an Eric Jones pops at Michigan. Maybe, we get somebody at a super speedway. But for the most part, it will be the names that we know.
Yeah, and that was something that a lot of people were talking about, is that having the full year under their belt, you had to expect that the big money teams were going to come into this season and just perform better early on than the smaller market teams. Money plays a huge factor there. And then, like Chris said, I mean, they're going to put forth more funds towards doing the research, doing the analytics and all that stuff, more time in the simulator. It is interesting for me to see, like you and I, Kyle, both kind of expected 23-11 to take a step up, and first couple of races didn't look great, but last week we saw a little bit of them coming on. Tyler Reddick performed better than what I had expected with a new engine and a car that he hadn't done well with in the first 2 weeks. And Bubba, top 10 car all day. So I'm excited to see what they have for the short track, with Wallace never really being a short track racer and Reddick being kind of, mediocre here. It'll be nice to see if they can maintain that like top 10, top 15 competitiveness going in, to see if they're now the new like offhand winners potentially out of race at that 20-1 or 25-1 number.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I'm also really curious to see, we saw Reddick really take a huge stride in road courses last year, but was that more of an RCR effect, or was that something that should carry over? Chris is nodding his head. I guess let's talk about Reddick a little bit, because yes, he was much better in Vegas. Obviously, did not have the qualifying that maybe we wanted to see, but figured some stuff out. Got in the backup car, got some stuff done on Sunday. Going forward, like especially with stuff like we saw with road courses, how dominant he could be. Are you a little more cautious than maybe we should have, than you were coming into the season? Or I guess where were you at with Reddick and what we've seen so far? Has that changed?
Okay, so I'll just say this. I thought 35 laps into the race on Sunday that Reddick was going to win. Like, he was flying, and his lap times were competitive with the leaders, and he was running like 15th.
Yeah.
So to say that I had unloaded on Reddick at 30-1, 25-1, 22-1, 20-1, 18-1, 16-1 is an understatement. I mean, I was very heavy on Tyler Reddick, because this guy went out there with no practice in qualifying, in a new car on this track, and passed fast cars early on. And yeah, he did run into some trouble, but I think that, man, he really hasn't had a chance to get his footing. Fontana is a completely different racetrack than anything else we'll see throughout the rest of the year. It's hard to even give a comp track. So I give him a pass there, but I was impressed at how well he ran. I mean, I know he finished 15th, which is obviously not where he wanted to be, but man, not many guys take a backup car with no practice time. I mean, the first time he made laps all weekend was when they went green. So I'll say I was shocked, not shocked, but like I was impressed with his run, even though he didn't get the finish he maybe wanted. Plus, he was bouncing off the wall left and right. Like, I had people messaging me like, this monster car just can't seem to, like, so, but when it comes to these road courses, if you let's just say you put Kyle Busch in the cars that Reddick had last year, he probably wins more races than Tyler Reddick.
Well, I don't think there's any debate that Kyle Busch overall is a much better driver than, 90% of the guys.
I think at the end of last season, after the way that Kyle Busch's season ended and the way Tyler Reddick stepped forward, I bet there was a little bit more of a debate than you're willing to give credit, Brian. Not that it should be, and not that.
Well, we're going to find out. I think we find out at COTA, because I mean, I don't want to say too much, but man, I think if you give Kyle Busch the cars that Reddick had, and
I'm curious to see. Obviously, Busch looked amazing 2 weeks ago. I'm curious to see what kind of numbers the market's going to put out there, because in theory, we might be able to sneak a little bit by the goalie, knowing that how good that car can be on short track, or on road courses rather. But the way Busch is performing, the way his championship futures are currently set, I don't know that we'll get the number that we want to hopefully get.
Well, Toyotas were terrible last year on road courses, and I don't even think that Reddick is going to be the biggest threat to win. If all of a sudden the Toyotas show up, Martin Truex Jr. is going to be the best road course racer when it comes to Toyotas. So, Toyota was just an afterthought when it came to road courses. Like, you weren't even like, oh, they'll be lucky to finish top 10. And it was always Chris Bell. You had Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex. Those guys can get around a road course. They were non-existent. So you all of a sudden, let's just say Toyota has improved their road course. They have to improve it by a lot, by like a magnitude of 10. Like, they have to get that much better. But all of a sudden, if Toyota gets that much better, I don't put Reddick as like the favorite of the Toyotas. I'd put Martin Truex Jr. as the favorite. So that's the complexion of road courses will change drastically after seeing practice and qualifying at COTA, for the entire year. And by the way, what do you have, 5 or 6 road course races? That's a big deal. One of them coming late in the season at the Roval. Like, it's very, very important that these teams unload well at road courses because it has huge implications for the championship. So I'm really interested to see. I would love to see Tyler Reddick win at COTA. I would love to see it. That would be the best thing that happened to Tyler Reddick all season so far. It would put to rest all of the, is RCR an upgrade or a downgrade? Like it would kind of put to rest a lot of those things, and also Tyler Reddick's talent. If he goes out there and wins in a Toyota on a road course, no one's going to question, Red Dog's talent anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm excited for that race for sure.
Yeah, and I think your Truex point is a great one, Brian. 2 years ago, it was Truex and Kyle Larson battling at all the road courses, and everyone else was kind of behind them. And last year was a frustrating one just across the board for Toyota, but it'll be curious to see kind of as they improve.
I think it's also important to note too for COTA, no Chase Elliott, who is renowned as the best road course racer.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
like so that opens up the market to a ton of possibilities.
Yeah.
So who do you make the favorite then? I mean,
it's probably going to be Larson. I mean, when you look at it from week to week, no matter how he ran last season, Larson seems to come into every single race as co-favorite or right around the front, top 3, top 4 guys. Yep. And he's looking like a top 5 car right now after 3 races. I mean, if Almirola doesn't skim the wall and spin out, he's running away with last week in Vegas.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just looking at the odds board. So you're going to take away Elliott. I mean, you could make an argument for Larson, Chastain, Kyle, Suarez. I mean, he was pretty good at road courses last year. Cindric, and oh, by the way, AJ Allmendinger, he's really good at road courses too.
Dude,
so
yes.
This will be. I'm excited for COTA. You guys have me all excited for COTA now. I haven't even thought this far ahead, and it's ooh man, COTA's going to be fun. That's a great point about Chase because he would have been the favorite, and I completely overlooked that. So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. And in terms of just kind of general thoughts of numbers getting posted, DK is just not posting top 10s anymore. Should we last year was awesome. They initially had top 20s and all this, and now the numbers seem to be going and fading and opportunities to kind of get down some action. Are you worried about NASCAR betting long term? Are you hoping that shows like yours, shows like ours can kind of get some momentum and maybe sports books are forced to give us a little more opportunity to bet action? But I guess what's your thoughts early and kind of going forward?
So here's just the raw, unfiltered truth about NASCAR betting. They could double or triple their handle on a NASCAR season, and they'd be better off increasing their NASCAR handle by 0.1% or their NFL handle by 0.1%. Yeah. That's just the math of it. Until these markets just get flooded with bets. Listen, there's very few people betting thousands of dollars on a bet in NASCAR. I think. I don't know that there's many. Most of those people have an edge.
Yeah.
The rest of the people that the books are trying to offset the sharp action with are $5, $10, $20, $50 bettors. And until these sports books take it seriously and actually invest in talent, because junior traders are doing this NASCAR stuff. A lot of these guys are fresh out of college. They might know a lot about NBA or college basketball or NFL, and they just want to get into odds making. They're like, okay, great. Now we need you to handicap cricket and NASCAR. And they're like, what the hell? I don't know this stuff. Yeah. And so they're kind of waiting for places like Westgate and Circa to open to give them kind of okay, these are the sharpest, in my opinion. Circa's probably the sharpest. Then it goes to Westgate. And then they're just kind of going from there and kind of moving based on the action that they have. So I still think there's plenty of options, but I mean, I can't really bet at DraftKings anyway, so it hasn't affected me too much. But it's one of those things where you saw DraftKings do such a good job last year, and then for them to, I know that they did well when it comes to their handle increasing, and then all of a sudden they just kind of pull back and say, "Oh, we're not interested anymore." It is a little concerning, but someone's going to pick up the slack. And the one thing we want to avoid, and I said this before on the Wednesday podcast or the Wednesday betting preview show with Derek Yoder, is we do not want odds to become commoditized. We do not want to just have one price for one guy across all these different sports books. So it is important that we do have competition when it comes to odds, and that way you can do some price shopping, because we need to avoid that at all costs. If I have to go become an odds maker at some point to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm going to be bummed, but I would hate to see that happen. That would be terrible.
Yeah. And I think it's important that places like DraftKings, like FanDuel, have options for the $5, the $10, the $20 better. I think it builds up the sport. Obviously, when Brian, we were in Vegas, we had, BetMGM and Circa and Westgate, and we had all these opportunities and find ways to get down on our favorite drivers, maybe fade some guys we don't like. But in majority of markets, I feel like that's a lot harder to find. Maybe you have one or two. Shouts to Bet Rivers and Barstool for actually listing some NASCAR stuff. We've been leaning a lot more kind of on them this season and giving us offerings. But it has been interesting to see DraftKings just like not do top tens and kind of the smattering of odds that they've shown. So
the one thing that I think would be really interesting to see if NASCAR would ever consider doing is very similarly to horse race tracks, how you can go to the window there and you could place a bet. Like in states with legalized betting, why are they not making a more concerted effort to, first of all, improving the Wi-Fi capabilities at these tracks, because the Wi-Fi at Las Vegas sucks.
Yeah.
And then having some sort of on track, like even if it's like an in-network system where you can place matchup bets during the race or after stage 1 or for stage 2, like that'll definitely increase the handle, and you'll probably attract more just NASCAR fans, not necessarily NASCAR betting fans, because a lot of them probably don't even know that these markets exist.
Well, for sure. And when you look at the way that Fox has covered some of these bets, it's like the week 1 at Fontana, they listed top 10 prices and tried to get, like, go ahead and pick the winner. It's like minus 500, and Boyer and Tony Stewart had no idea what to say.
Yeah.
And the poor intern that had to make that graphic just learned the hard way.
Yeah.
But you also are talking about something completely different. You're talking about pari-mutuel money versus actual, a bookmaker. So the way that, horse betting works is obviously the odds are determined by the dollar amounts placed on the wagers. So I think that'd be a great option. You're just going to have to get licensed in every individual state. I don't know how easy that is. There's a lot of red tape that goes into and bureaucracy that goes into getting these licenses. That's why you kind of see this Machiavellian old guard continue to get these licenses in every state. You don't see any new operators coming into the business. If you do, they're tied to someone that used to work at a certain place. So it would be great if it was a true competitive market, but when you're giving away X amount of licenses, you're never going to have perfect competition, which means you're going to stifle innovation. You're not going to have the smartest people go to work for operators, which right now, like, not even close. Like what they're paying, whatever they're paying these junior interns to put odds up against, like, I would never go do that. You need to actually invest in quality people and I'm nothing against the people that are setting the odds. I think they're doing great, but like they have to start somewhere. And because the market is so small that they can afford to not have their sharpest guys make these odds. I don't know. I don't know much about that side. That would be a good question. You should have Todd come on and talk about that. The odds making side, because he would be, would have way more insight as to what that would look like from book to book.
Yeah, I think that would be a good conversation for us to set up in the future, Brian, because we talked about kind of doing these like quarterly check-ins, and I think that would be a fascinating conversation. Just the people that are obsessed with NASCAR and want to bet NASCAR week to week aren't going to go on the other side of the counter. And the people that are willing to go on the other side of the counter are just looking for it as a stepping stone up to the next.
Exactly.
They could get into.
Yeah. No one says I want, like, when they're in college or whatever, they're getting their degree in, I don't know, you can get like sports betting degrees now. I don't know what it's called. I probably sound like an idiot for not knowing that, but like, man, I just want to set NASCAR odds. That's the pinnacle for me. It's like, Yeah, that's the guy we hire instantly is like the trader for the NASCAR, lines, and same for IndyCar and Formula One. So I guess Formula One might have, because it has more of a worldwide, I guess, popularity that in especially in the European markets, it's much sharper. In my opinion, I think that Formula One's much sharper.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's easy to set lines for F1 when you have Max Verstappen winning every race after getting to the first turn.
I love my tweet that was like, congratulations on a hard fought season on your, third straight world championship. I thought it was clever. And then someone's like, don't jinx him. I'm like, don't jinx him.
Don't
Like,
jinx
you're
him,
worried
dude.
about Max Verstappen winning? Like,
Yeah.
he won by 30 seconds or whatever. And that's only because there was a safety car. It would have been
Right?
more,
This is
Watch out for the
something
Max
I've
super
been-
fans. They'll come after you.
Yeah, this is something I've been like harkening on for the past couple of years. Like I cannot, and I don't understand how people watch F1, just because I have zero interest in watching battles for 6th and 7th or for 10th for like the last point of the standings. I mean, I want to see who's winning, and if there's no competition for the winner of the race, like it's just not something that piques my interest.
But I'll tell you what, whoever is running their marketing department,
Yes.
you are doing a hell of a job. But I'll tell you what, to see those numbers come out, I mean, we like NASCAR. I say we, like I'm NASCAR. Like we're NASCAR, by the way. We spanked them in viewership. And I think that that's really important, because all you hear about is Drive to Survive, Drive to Survive. It's like, yeah, dude, that's really well done. It's a good show. I've never watched it, but people love it that don't watch auto racing. They like that show.
Yeah.
So if, and I think NASCAR did a okay job with theirs, but man, Formula One, it's just cool, man. They go to the coolest places on earth.
Yeah.
And they have the most tricked out car. They're the best cars on earth. Like no one's beating them on any road course. There's nothing that can compete. But I don't know. Now I've digressed, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was great to see NASCAR and especially the trucks and the Xfinity both have an increase in viewership. Was really cool to see.
Yeah, I think that was the most important takeaway from the weekend, from a like TV viewership perspective and from a personal perspective. Like being at the truck race and the Xfinity race, it was way busier than it was last spring when I was there in Vegas. So like obviously the on track stuff of people actually attending the races might be increasing. I would love to see what the attendance numbers have been at Auto Club. I mean, Auto Club, you could probably throw that out the window because nobody here in Southern California wanted anything to do with 40-degree temperatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to see Xfinity gain a little more popularity, because I think if you can latch onto a driver early, and then follow them up, you can get into Josh Berry, you can get into Austin Hill, you can get into some of these guys that may work themselves up through the ranks, and then kind of long term you grow the sport. But let's get back to 2023 and kind of where we're at so far. Chris, who has been most impressive, maybe compared to what your expectations were going into the season, or somebody that maybe you were excited to see and they're following through on everything that you thought they could be, and maybe even a little bit more?
Well, I mean, the biggest bet I've ever made in my life was Kyle Busch over 1.5 wins. And the biggest payout I'll ever have, well, not ever, but the biggest payout if it were to win would be Kyle Busch at 18-1 to win the championship. So I think that those lines were wrong. I mean, by the way, they both could still lose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think that his 1.5 wins will lose, but I do like, obviously you get into the championship or the final four, like anything can happen, or even the final 8. Like you're talking about Kyle Larson going from a 10-win season to not making the the final 8, right? So like anything can happen, but I thought that it revitalized Kyle Busch, and I don't know, I even hate that because it's so subjective. Like, oh, he's going to try harder. Like he was kind of trying harder last year, but or trying. Like it's not like Kyle Busch wasn't trying to win races, but I feel like the quit was just so quick. Like as soon as something went wrong, it was like he checked out and he's like, I don't care if I even finish on the lead lap. So I'd say Kyle Busch is the guy that I actually thought was going to have a good season. I think someone that's kind of shocked me, I don't know. I don't think that there's any, like, to the good side. I don't think that there's been many guys that have been shockingly good. I mean, I think Chastain going out there at Fontana, that was a pretty impressive run. I actually think that he had a better car than Kyle. Kyle just ran a better race. And, after 20 lap tires, Kyle just figured out a way to get around him. And then obviously green flag pit stops was, tough to beat Kyle on those. I mean, it's tough to beat him. But I thought that Chastain had a better car I thought he had a better car and he led a lot of laps. So I don't know. I don't know if there's been a lot of surprises to the good, but obviously the surprises to the bad are, look at the other 3 cars at SHR, even Reddick, you could say, man, kind of underwhelming. Chris Bell, no one talks about Chris Bell anymore. Like he's like no one even mentions Chris Bell. And he was kind of all we talked about the last 5 races of the year last year. So Chase Briscoe, I mean, Ryan Preece after the class performance. I mean, I thought he was going to be at least competitive, and he's barely a lead lap guy. I bet against him heavily. So anytime I bet against someone heavily, they get the first lucky dog. That's just automatic that they don't get pinned a lap. So I was, kind of doing a little complaining to myself when, the caution came out for the first stage, and of course Ryan Preece is the lucky dog. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And I think that's a good kind of idea of where the cars are at, Brian, because we talked about maybe there being a little bit more of a gap. Guys like Eric Jones, guys like Michael McDowell, guys like Ryan Preece, like Chase Briscoe, that we thought maybe would be a little bit more competitive week to week, maybe not contend for wins, but be in the top 10 conversation, top 5 conversation, just be stronger. And they're like top 20 type cars. And it's been really underwhelming to kind of see the strides they didn't make between last year and this
the strides they didn't make. I like that. The strides that haven't been made.
And to that point, like for me, Chase Briscoe has got to be the most disappointing guy. He was somebody coming into the year that I was, obviously it's looking stupid now, but I was high on as like a potential sleeper for the playoffs and a potential championship pick, because his number was huge. I think it was like 50-1. But it's funny seeing Kevin Harvick still maintain his normal. He's top 10 machine. Like I highly doubt we're going to see him winning 3 races or anything of that nature this season. He just doesn't have the car. So for me, I thought SHR, they would come out this year with a lot more focus on trying to get Chase Briscoe like up to that top SHR driver spot. And clearly right now he's either not ready or the cars just haven't been set up right. And then, like, for me, the funnest driver I've seen so far has got to be Corey LaJoie. Like, running in the high teens, like low 20s for 3 straight races. Like, this guy's putting together a good season in a crap car, essentially.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good call, especially as a guy that, was just maybe he would pop out like a super speedway and then kind of would be an afterthought for the rest of the week. It is nice to see what we saw from Ross Chastain actually be viable and be something that week to week, this guy is a legitimate contender in the conversation. Obviously elevating Trackhouse to a new level. We saw Suarez look much better, but just knowing Chastain's an actual guy as opposed to, maybe a guy who popped for a season, had a great run and kind of faded off into mediocrity. So that's been interesting, and kind of watch him grow as a driver, knowing when to be aggressive. He's still maybe a little too aggressive for his own good, but he seems to be a little more subjective in terms of when he's willing to push it, and a little more willing to, okay, it's the first stage. I'm not gonna, run Denny off the road. I'll wait till the third stage for that.
Yeah, I agree. Chastain's he's a good driver, man. That guy's gonna be. You give him and put him in top equipment, he's gonna be there. He's been good. He was good in the trucks. He's good in Xfinity. Like. And he's just kind of he's kind of a wheelman. I'd put him in a wheelman group. Like, hey, you put him in something that's competitive, he's gonna be there. And you might not like it, but he's a guy that you don't want to race against, but you want him on your team, in my opinion. Which is kind of I feel like that's a compliment in a way.
So is he more Cole Trickle than like just technician on the track? He's just kind of winging it.
Yeah, he just kind of does whatever he has to. I mean, yeah, I do. I think he has to. Like he's.
Well, and I think as his equipment gets better, he's going to be like more risk averse, but he knows that his car might not be the best car on the track. So he is going to have to do little things to get into victory lane, which I think has, might rub some people the wrong way, but I absolutely love it. And I think having a villain in NASCAR is never a bad thing either.
Agree.
Let's shift our focus. You have anything else?
I think we could all agree that when you're at the track, the biggest villain at the track is Bubba Wallace.
Yeah.
Wow. What was that like? Like, he's getting booed now? Is that like?
He's the only driver during intros that gets majority boos.
Really? Oh
Mhm.
man. Well,
It's a
you know
lot of
what?
people
He
outing
kind of deserves
themselves.
it. Listen, I'll say this. Like, I guess nobody deserves anything in life, but if that guy has talent, I'll be listen, I try to be as objective as humanly possible. I literally, biases will cost me money. I try to look at this as objectively as possible in week to week. He has the speed to win races. If something goes wrong, this guy flies off the handle, and let's not even worry about the fact he attacked Kyle Larson for.
Mhm.
And listen, it's not like Kyle Larson is Ross Chastain, okay? But when you listen to Bubba on the radio, he sounds like he's jaded over these finishes. It's like, dude, sorry, man, that happens. You're gonna have slow pit stops. If you let it ruin your day, you're never gonna be a champion.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It happens all the time. Chase Elliott, when he won his championship, he had to start at the rear. Was he like, oh, woe is me? No, he went out there and after 40 laps was like, I'm going to lead this thing.
Yeah.
He just has to stop looking at the world's completely against him. And his comments after the Larson thing was, these guys just have to realize I'm up here racing like this. Like, you're the only person that thinks you shouldn't be up there racing. Like, everyone anticipated you being fast.
Yeah.
Me included, as someone that my livelihood is dependent upon predicting how good you're going to be. I think you're going to be good. And he comes off pissed all the time. And listen, how many times did Chris Bell go to the rear last year? How many times did Denny Hamlin go to the rear last year? And you don't see them saying, oh, I'm, my pit crew or whatever. Look at Ryan Blaney. Same thing. Kevin Harvick, all of these guys,
has legitimate gripes every single week.
Every
I don't
week,
even want to talk about Ryan Blaney. It's not even...
But yeah, no, and I think he also has run-ins with the most popular drivers, which I think also impacts a lot of the bias against him. But it was interesting to see him get so much of the booze when everybody else it was interesting though, because last year, Brian, it seemed like people were out on Kyle Busch.
Oh, everybody hated Kyle Busch in Vegas.
Vegas is back in. They love Kyle Busch. They were at every race for him. They were cheering for him. He was.
Is it Toyota? Kid. Was Toyota the reason that he was hated? Or is it just the?
I don't know.
I almost feel like people got they just got fed up with the entire marriage of Kyle Busch and Toyota, because last year they were just booing Kyle Busch, and this year, from the couple of people that we spoke to, the vast majority of them were all like, oh yeah, Toyota, they wanted him out and they didn't do him any favors, blah blah blah, and they're like, yeah, go Kyle Busch. So
interesting.
Change of scenery. It's interesting. It'll be like Packer fans when Aaron Rodgers leaves. Everybody will be back in on Aaron Rodgers, and Packer fans will hate him, but that's okay. Let's spin it forward and talk about this week in Phoenix. Obviously there's not a ton of lines out, but just in terms of what you're expecting to see, or who you think might have a strong week, is anyone jumping out among the masses to you, Chris?
Well, we have to look at the changes that are going to happen, right? You have a 30% reduction in downforce. So what does that mean? That means that in theory, it puts the car more in the driver's hands, right? You're going to have less on throttle time in the corners. Less on throttle time, better for racing. That's not even a new rule. That's something NASCAR is known for ever. Less on throttle time in the corner, the better the racing. Give them 1,000 horsepower, 900 horsepower, and give them low downforce, and let them figure out how to get it around there faster. So I fully expect the best drivers to come to the front. That's where I'm at. Now, I am not getting too far invested in anything. I'm trying to I actually went back and started to watch the races from last year, and I'm like, I don't know if I can take anything. I don't want to think that Blaney is automatically going to win this week, because if you watch those 2 races last year, you would say Ryan Blaney was the best car in both races. And I'm not going to be married to Ryan Blaney this week, because I don't know if that's going to change when you take this downforce away. So I do think you're going to see, I think I said a text to Todd. I think you look at just wheelmen, and I would say these are the top drivers in the sport. And, I'm trying not to forget any here, because I don't want to like all of a sudden, well, this guy's an idiot. But I think Ross Chastain is one of those guys. Yeah. You put him in a race car, I don't care how it's handling, he's going to get the best out of it. And so I put Ross in that camp. I put Kevin Harvick in that camp. Mm-hmm. I put Kyle Larson in that camp. I put Kyle Busch in that camp. I put Denny Hamlin in that camp. And maybe Truex. Those are the guys that I expect to run well. And I know I did not go out on any limbs there, or like, it's going to be Chase Briscoe or something. But I just think that if you have experience getting around that track, that's a benefit. Obviously, those guys have run a ton of races there. And I think that they get kind of the best out of the car, even when it doesn't perform well. The guys that don't do that are guys like William Byron. William Byron, if his car is not good, run 20th, non-factor all day.
Well, we saw it last year with him. He was top 5 or finishing, 18th or
when he unloads on Friday or Saturday, it's like, oh, Williams either going to be contending for the win or trying to stay on the lead lap. Yeah. Like that's his season. And then you look at someone like Alex Bowman. He's not the opposite, but he can get a better finish out of an average car. Like he can adjust and maybe adjust his driving style, or find a better line and find a way to pass cars if he's a 15th to 18th place car. Yeah. Byron doesn't do that very well. So I expect the veterans that have gotten around this track to do very well, but ultimately anyone can catch a setup this week. I just don't know who it's going to be quite yet.
Yeah, I'm really I'm curious to see how Byron qualifies. I think he could be the pole sitter this week, and then, like you mentioned, if things don't go perfectly, he's all of a sudden in 17th and just happy to cruise around and call it a day. I do think it's interesting that Briscoe is priced at 20-1. I was initially kind of excited about that number, but the longer I've thought about it, the more like his lack of performance coming in. He's not priced where he should be priced 40-1, 50-1 based on what we've seen, even as good as he was last year. Yeah. Curious to see, how if he practices better, maybe qualifies well, then maybe I'll change my mind. But at this point, he's definitely not somebody that I'm interested, that I'm paying attention to. I love the Harvick call. He is definitely someone I know is priced aggressively this week, but I think he's worth it. And I'm really curious to see about Christopher Bell. I want to see him have a good race. I think he is a guy that could perform really well this weekend. And if everything comes together, maybe this is the thing that gets the Toyotas going, and he kind of takes them out and has a really strong race.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you, Chris, do you put any like credence on the guys who actually already have on-track experience during the Phoenix test? Here, like a Logano or a Keselowski or Chastain and a Bell, like, is that going to favor them, or is the almost hour-long practice on Friday essentially going to squash?
Oh yeah, well, that'll squash that for sure. I think right now, remember, at this point in the week, you should not be trying to predict the winner. You should be trying to predict where the market's going. So who are the guys that are going to probably exceed current expectations? Yeah, that's what you're trying to do early in the week, because the goal at this point is to try to reduce the hold that the odds makers have, right? So, I did jump on a couple bets of Larson and Kyle Busch. Circa opened them at 13, was able to get some down there. Those have moved a little bit since then, but I did not see a world where Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson go off at more than 13-1. And that's the only reason I did it. Do I know if they're going to win? No, I don't have a clue, but I don't think that they're going to go off higher than that. And by the way, I'm okay taking a chance at, I don't care what the track is. You give me Kyle Larson at 13 and Kyle Busch at 13.
Oh yeah.
You know, at a non-super speedway, I'm okay with sitting on that and saying, yeah, you know, I took a stab, and if I lose the money, that's fine, because if they're not good, then you can fade them in matchups and you're probably going to make money, you know? So, yeah, if you have some sort of an externality, like a blown tire or a bad pit stop, like that's going to happen. You just hope at the end of the year, it all equals out. So I would say practice will trump all of those things. The car is even different than what they tested with. So, I mean, I think you just have to give experience the leg up here at this point. They know what adjustments, you know, and also, you know, running that Xfinity race on Saturday, I do think will give an advantage. I think the best way, I've always said this, that I feel like they're one adjustment ahead. That's what happens when you're run the Xfinity race. You're just one adjustment ahead. It's not like this massive, oh, you're going to finish five spots better than you start. I just think it's a little bit of an advantage to understand where your car is going to go and where the track is going to go and how that's going to affect the handling of the race car.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. The sooner you can fix the little things that you need to adjust, the sooner your car is going to be running better, the sooner you can get to the front, sooner you can be in contention. Anybody that's jumping out to you, Brian?
I mean, I saw it earlier in the day, but Tyler Reddick, he opened at like 30 or 35 at a lot of places, and it was
really?
Instantaneously something that popped. Just kind of seeing the way he progressed last week in Vegas, like in person, watching him maneuver through traffic was extremely impressive. And then the other guy who I'm a little bit slower than others to jump on the old fogies, as I call him, but Martin Truex Jr. opened at 13 at one or two books, and I think that number was pretty intriguing. Like Chris said, he has tremendous history here. And then the guy that I felt was too short was Kevin Harvick. Like, I don't care how successful he's been here. I just don't see a guy who's been running near the front as consistently enough to open with 10-1 outright odds.
Okay, so I want to push back on that just so we have the discussion. Okay, Kevin Harvick last year, he was terrible at Fontana. This year, kind of in the mix. Okay.
All right.
Also, kind of in the mix a little bit of Vegas, where he was not in the mix last year. So I'm not saying Kevin Harvick's going to win. I think that they've struggled. By the way, everyone that thinks that like Kevin Harvick's dominated here lately, yeah, he like 5 years ago he dominated here. He has not been dominant here.
His last win was 2018, and he has like I think one finish inside the top 5 since then.
Yeah, I mean he runs 6th to 10th, right, and he does that pretty consistently. He just kind of can get around there. However, he has shown a better start to the season than he did last year. And last year, I'd say he's probably a 4th place car in the spring, and maybe I don't even know what he was in the fall. The fall race is so tough because you have the championship, and it's like it's a different race. So I guess if you go off the spring, I did think he was probably a 3rd or 4th place car in the spring, which was much better than his finishes at Fontana in Vegas. Now, I have not bet Kevin Harvick, but I'll tell you what, if he unloads well and we get 8-1, that's gonna be a monster.
Well, so that's kind of what I wanted to hit on is like I don't think he warrants opening outright odds without seeing them on track at 10-1, just seeing what he's been able to do or not been able to do in the next gen car.
I agree.
But like you said, if he comes out and practice and qualifying and he's a top 5 car, like I'm all in 8.5, 9-1. You know, it just knowing his history, and especially hearing you talk about like you have a good inkling of thinking that it's going to be the experienced guys who are going to come out here and perform extremely well. Like I would much rather get in at a slightly shorter number after seeing him put it together on the track.
I'm so on board. I'm even like, when it comes to Harvick here, it's so funny because right now we're kind of like, I mean, I'm not listen, Harvick every week looks average in practice and qualifies average. In races better than average. Races a little bit better than he looked in practice and qualifying. This is not like a new thing. Yeah. But it's like Harvick at Phoenix, you know what's in there. It's like Johnson at Dover. Like he might not look that good, but all of a sudden if something hits, it's like all of a sudden you're not even caring about the 10-1 price that you could have gotten when it opened. It's like, how much can I get down at 6 and 5-1? Because I don't care at this point. And so I'm 100%. I'm not anyone going out and listen, you could be, by the way, You could be right if you go out and bet Kevin Harvick at 12-1 and he could win the race. You could be
Mhm.
right, but I don't think that's a smart decision. I agree with Brian. Let's see him unload. If he unloads, great. I'm happy to pound him at 6-1. I'm happy to do that because I know but also he can unload very average and qualify average, which is what he's done for the past 2 years. And you're still going to get 8-9-1. And if he looks good live, just take him live. You know,
Yeah.
you're going to get a better price.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. The goal should not be to race to the market and get down as on the best number. If you have a strong feeling and you love a option like a Kyle Busch at 13 or Kyle Larson, obviously fire. But if you find somebody that you're excited that could have potentially have a good week, and that number is not going to move dramatically, then be a little more patient. Make sure that your eyes match up with the information that you see, and then you get the best of your number. That being said, Brian, Kevin Harvick is going on the card this week, so check the box. All right, I think that will do it. This was a fantastic conversation, Chris. Really appreciate you hopping on and chatting with us. Tell everybody where they can find your podcasts and all the content you put out there.
Yeah, so obviously you want to follow me on Twitter at Chris Werme 15. I'm so cool that I had to get the 15 on the back there, which is just I'm at like there's someone that's at Chris Werme that has never posted anything. And I feel like Elon should boot them so that way I can just get Chris Werme. But yeah, follow me on Twitter. I just hit my 1000th follower today. Proud of every one of them. Thank you. Follow me there. And then the podcast drops usually every Thursday afternoon. You want to follow at Bet the Board on wherever you get your podcasts. It's on everything. And that's with Todd Furman, and it's called Stay Green. And the reason I call it Stay Green is because what I want towards the end of the race is to say I don't want to have a caution in order to make money. I want everyone in NASCAR gambling Twitter to be saying Stay Green. And it's so funny. It's like stay green unless I need a caution. Like that's like there's a little asterisk there. But that's the name of the podcast. And then the pre-race poll, which is my pre-race betting show, where I just basically it's just me running down the field and going through what I think is going to happen. And I think it's great because the people that tune into that, I feel like they're the most informed NASCAR bettors and DFS. And I have no problem with someone making a great point and me changing my mind. I think kind of this hive mind mentality of let's bounce some things off each other. Listen, I don't care who's right. Let's just get it right. And sometimes that's someone else. Sometimes it's me. But ultimately, the goal is not for my bets to be better than your bets. The goal is it's us versus them. It's us versus the odds makers, right? So, tune into that if you're interested in that sort of thing. Great back and forth. And I just kind of tell you what I think. And so far I've been hot. I picked Kyle Busch in the first race and William Byron in the second race for my pick. But yeah, those are the two places. Like I said, it's on Twitter and I really enjoy the pre-race poll is as much for me as it is for everyone else, because betting this sport before I realized what was out there, it was just me. It was me talking to people that were like, yeah, we don't care about NASCAR. And I'm like, oh, okay, but you don't think that 13-1 on Kyle Busch is a good opener? They're like, yeah, well, I don't know. Where is Aaron Rodgers going to land this year? That's what they care about. So it's great to just kind of talk out loud, and it's great to get corrected. I welcome it because, like I said, the goal, ego aside, let's just get it right. Let's make as much money as possible. So those are the two places where you can find me.
Right on. Yeah. Make sure you follow Chris. Make sure you check out all of his content. And the pre-race poll is a great just exercise in just making sure everything's ready before race day. And that's kind of what Brian and I are going after. We talk things out on Wednesday usually. And then by the time we get to Saturday, maybe our thoughts have changed. Maybe we've come around to different ideas. Maybe we've found a new piece of information, but we're always trying to keep growing, keep getting better. And then, by Sunday, hopefully we're hitting winners, and sometimes we're wanting to stay green, and sometimes we're cheering for that caution if you're holding a William Byron ticket. So,
well, but so everyone thinks that I was the one that wanted a caution. By the way, I put the little stay green light on. Like, you don't think I had Kyle Larson live? I mean,
Right.
like, I had enough on Byron to where I think it was the quickest live bet I'd ever made. Was when Larson was up like 3.5 spots running fast lap times, like Cliff Daniels on the radio. It's like, okay, it's you in the 24 today. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And Kyle had gone from 7 to 8 to 1 live, like 5 or 6 laps in once Byron got the lead. And so I'm like, okay, max bet, line moves, max bet. So like, I was definitely happy with a Kyle Larson victory. You know, because it's about profits, man. You can't get everything right every week.
Yeah.
So like, take your profits. And by the way, Brian, I will say so far, your Logano not top 10 so far. I must say the bet of the year so far, because I did not have the balls to do it. So well done.
Yeah, that was a nice hit. Yeah, we had a good week, and we got to keep it
You
going
hit Byron
forward.
at 17, like,
Yeah.
man, balling.
Yeah, so it was strong. Chris, thanks again for joining us. We'll have to regroup here maybe in a month or so and kind of catch up and see where we're at. Enjoy the race this week. I know you're going to be out in Phoenix.
Yep.
Have fun, but not too much fun.
I will.
Enjoy the hell
Don't
out
worry,
of it.
I'll have fun.
Brian and I will be back doing our normal thing throughout the week. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the thumbs up, all that good stuff. And we'll talk to you guys next time.